Welcome back to the Edgewell podcast and to our Generations in Teaching series, a reflective journey through the evolving seasons of a teaching career. Today, we're stepping into the 50s, a decade where experience meets perspective. Teaching in your 50s is often marked by clarity, confidence, and maybe even a bit of hard-earned wisdom. Today, we're thrilled to welcome Cheryl Harrison, a seasoned teacher who's living this chapter. Cheryl brings a wealth of experience into everything she does, and we consider her a Jill of all trades. No matter what the project Cheryl takes on, one thing is for sure. She is organized, passionate, and wanting to build strong relationships in the school community and always finding ways for students to shine. Over the years, we've observed Cheryl balance her teaching life and home life through the ups and downs and all arounds. In today's episode, we'll jump into our Generation series with Cheryl to explore the twists and turns of teaching in your 50s. Let's dive into the well. Welcome to the Edgewell podcast, a show created for, by, and with teachers. I'm Alex.
And I'm Chelsea. Our goal is to share insights and connect with fellow teachers on how to thrive, both personally and professionally.
Join us as we dive deep into the well of information filled with relatable tips, practical discussions, and ideas that go way beyond the classroom walls. Let's be well
and do well together. Hi, Cheryl. Thank you so much for being here. Even though I see you every day, I'm so happy to see you again today. So thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Chelsea, for inviting me. I know this is very different than third floor. Hello, Alex.
Oh, hi. And you know what? I have to point out to listeners right now that we are all enjoying a Saturday. We're outside. It is not beautiful outside. It is very dreary. And we are all wearing cozy outfits. And I am very happy to see you in your, in your space, enjoying the weekend. I have to say that.
Thanks. And if you hear snoring, that is my dog.
Good. It sounds like a nice, lazy Saturday. And we all need that as teachers.
That's right.
Before we dive into the well, if you haven't already, head back and listen to our Generations episodes on teaching in your 20s, your 30s, and your 40s to catch up on the full journey. Now let's get into the 50s. Cheryl, to kick things off, can you tell us about your teaching journey? How long have you been in the classroom? Can you give us a snapshot of your experience? And what does it feel like to be teaching in your 50s?
Well, I started in 1997, so pretty much right out of university, and I moved away. So I moved to Fort Frances, and I taught there for 2 years in a very small school. All of it was split grades all the way up, and it was really weird because there were cows right behind the schoolyard. So that was a very interesting thing when you come from, being in the city and all of a sudden there's cows and the kids are like, we're going to go play with them after school. And you're like, I don't know what that's like.
That's a different experience. I taught in a farming community as well, and it was a really different experience, but a really great one.
Yeah, it was super good. I mean, I still have my connections out there with people and friends that I made in Fort Frances and in Emo and Stratton. And so I taught there for 2 years. I taught grade 5, 6, and then kindergarten. And then I moved to Dryden. And in Dryden, I taught the English to French immersion program. So I taught from grade 1 to grade 6, all the English portion of their program, because it was a little bit different there. They would have half a day or a quarter of the day, depending on the grade level, in English. And then we moved home, and I taught everything from K to 8. And this is my 27th year as a teacher.
That is a lot of change, and I need to throw a few other changes in there. So you went from a K to 6 school, and then you made the move into a 7-8 school. And if I recall, you were doing culinary for quite some time.
Yes, that's how I came to be there at the 7-8.
So Cheryl, I was taking notes as you were talking. All these splits: a rural school, an urban school. K to 8 you've taught, the level of experience that you've had in your career, and I now know you're math focused. It's just so broad, your experience. So I'm wondering, at this stage in your career, having gone through so many changes, What are some of the big lessons that you've gleaned from those major changes, some major takeaways?
The kids are all the same. Like, I want to say there's not, like, the grade levels are different and your challenges are different, but all in all, they are the same, whether you are in kindergarten or you are in grade 8. They all want your attention. They all want to talk to you. Just the ones in grade 8 are all in bigger bodies and they're all bigger than me.
Yeah, that's true. That goes along the lines of us talking about that connection. That's always going to be steady in teaching. No matter what happens, what the kids need the most is the connection piece. Doesn't matter what grade they're in. So that's huge in teaching.
All right. So, Cheryl, you talked about the kids, but what about you? What has changed for you? Now that you're in your 50s and you are moving towards retirement, what changes have you seen?
Well, I think when you start as a teacher, that is your whole identity. You are a teacher and it surrounds everything that you do. I know when I moved to emo in the very start of my teaching career, it was like the new teacher's coming, the new teacher's coming. And that was your whole identity. But as you're moving through, you're no longer just the teacher and you have to be ready to identify yourself as something else because it's coming to an end and you're always going to be a teacher, but you're not going to have a class after. So you still need to have your own identity and have things outside of school that you can participate in and buy into. So you are a teacher, but you're also a mom and a wife and something else. You have to have something else that's there and friends and other interests to carry you through, because in the beginning teaching is everything and then you add in spouses and kids and that's all wrapped up for quite a few years. But now as your kids are growing older, you need to have something else to continue on with.
So are you finding then that you are actively building that into your day-to-day experience, like planning for that with that in mind and diversifying?
I think so. I'm trying to build other connections outside of school and focusing more on things that myself and Sean can do together and planning trips with our friends, which is something that, wasn't really part of it when the kids were younger because we were so involved in sports and traveling with our sports teams and that for our kids. And now our kids are older and we need to go back and plan trips for ourselves.
I think that's really interesting. And I'm actually starting to think about that right now, even though I have many more years left in teaching and my kids are still pretty young and I'm in the thick of it. But I think that's a challenge for teachers because along with all of those responsibilities you have and all of those things that you're doing, teaching is such a huge part of our lives. Like we can't just turn it off. So it's almost like we do revolve our lives around this teaching cycle that we experience annually. But when you start getting older and you start looking at your future and seeing that, oh, these kids are getting their own lives and they're going off to do something new, then you go, all right, now what do I have? And what can I maybe finally do or start doing bit by bit so that I am set up for when I have more free time? So that is a challenge for teachers just because it's really a part of our lifestyle.
100%. Your whole identity is always wrapped up in that. Like if you go to a party or a gathering of friends, oh, that's the teacher, and
Yeah.
everybody wants to talk to you about, oh, my kid didn't do this and they're doing this. And
It really is woven into every single thing that we do. So that's interesting. I'm really happy that you're thinking with the future in mind. I am going to point out to listeners, though, that when we were trying to get on this call, Cheryl was running around her house and still trying to input track numbers for a track and field meet. So, I mean, you've not slowed down and work has woven into your life. It is part of the fabric of who we are. And you don't just turn it off. Like there's so many ongoing pieces. And even if you're not taking an actionable step, you're constantly thinking about what is next, what I said to a kid, and how I'm going to deal with the situation. You just it's hard to,
It's hard to turn it off because it's so much, and the students become so much part of your life as well, right? Like, you worry about the kid that's not getting it and what am I going to do? And just because you're at home and it's the weekend doesn't mean that you stop thinking about them.
Yeah, that's true. There are so many thoughts that go through your head even when you leave work. And honestly, Cheryl, you are such a hard worker and you care so much. And I have to tell you, I'm not worried about you when you retire. I know that you're just going to keep going and going and running and running. And I feel like I'm going to have to call you and say, Cheryl, have you taken any time to relax in your retirement? And you're probably going to say no.
You don't turn it off. And in this podcast, we're always talking about making sure that we're taking care of ourselves. So I will swing back to that and just say the importance of making sure that you're your best self for work and for your family. It starts with that self-care piece. So Cheryl, I hope even though you were running around, that at some point you're going to take a lot of time this weekend to reset and refill that well. So, just one of those things. What has surprised you the most about this career and about your experience as a teacher thus far?
How cyclical it is. So everything that is old is new again. It is just with a different label. So if I want to look at, say, grade 1, right? How there was such a focus on phonics and everything. And then boom, out the door phonics went and whole language came in. And then we discovered that that wasn't really working very well for the kids. And now we're right back to phonics and knowing all your letter sounds and, oh, how about math facts? And we had said as teachers for years, kids need to know their facts. Oh, no, we're not going to do that. Well, we're right back in the same point again where knowing your facts is important, which is something teachers have said all along, right? So it just always seems to be a rebrand, right? We did it before, they took a break from it, we're doing it again. It has a different name and it might have a few different steps, but it's the same thing as it was previous.
Yeah, and we talked about that in our Teaching in Your 40s episode, how you see these cycles come and go, you see these trends come and go, introductions to new curriculum, etc. And over time, you really learn to stop. We talked about pause before reaction and say, where have I seen this before? And how am I going to work with this? Instead of saying, oh my goodness, everything is flipped upside down now. No, it's not. There's something in there that you've seen before and you know how to work with that.
Yeah. And you probably called it something different and it didn't have a fancy name and now it has a fancy name, but it's probably some of your best practices that you do in your class anyway. That's just coming back again because you knew it worked, but now everybody else realizes that, yeah, that's the thing that works the best. We're going back to it.
Speaking of change then, what changes do you think that we have to make in education moving forward, Cheryl?
I think society needs more focus that education is important. I think that we have slipped away from that. I feel that we have, as teachers, we often have children's best interests at heart, but sometimes we're fighting parents along the way for that. So I think administrators, our higher ups, need to value teachers' experience and teachers' opinions because you've been through the changes and you've been through the difficult parents and everybody's had a teacher and everybody thinks that they know what teachers' jobs are like. Everybody thinks that they can be a teacher, but not everybody can be a good teacher.
Okay, so Cheryl, with everything that you've experienced and where you are now, can you tell us what you enjoy most about teaching in this era that you're in?
The students and the friendships with my colleagues at school. I think that, yes, the curriculum's important. And you guys know me. I am very focused on covering all of the things that I need to cover, but just the relationships and just being with the kids and students and making those friendships beyond the subject that you teach, right? Because not all kids enjoy the subject, but all kids can enjoy being in your classroom. And the friendships. So I've made a lot of friendships with other teachers, with staff. those are important, because just staying in your classroom can't be the be all and end all every day. And you need to get out of that box, so to speak, and know that other people are struggling with the same things that you're struggling with.
Yeah, I fully agree. Work is so much fun when you have people that you are connected with, people that you can laugh with, and people that you can really share your struggles with. It makes a huge difference. Not everybody has that. So we are very fortunate at our school that we are surrounded by so many amazing people. I am every day excited to see my colleagues, especially when I walk by you every morning, Cheryl. You know, if I ever need something, if I need an answer to something, if I need a resource, you are literally jumping on it. And what I get is always just done, to
Thanks, Chelsea.
just to the best of your abilities. I know that you're, because you're such a hard worker. Cheryl, are you type A?
Oh my gosh,
Probably.
please. Okay, are you even asking that question at this point? I mean,
It's so hard for me to understand because I'm so not type A, but I just admire type A people. So
Except my desk does not look like that. My desk is like, and don't look at my drawers. Ah!
okay. Well, that's a little tidbit to learn about you.
Monday
But
morning.
but like, so the other, this is the kids need to see the friendship too, right? That makes a difference, I think. Bush came by, we were doing circumference, so I gave the kids all a string and they were measuring it. At the end of the string, right, I teach them how to tie it in a knot. And I know that sounds super easy to everybody who's not a teacher out there, but it is a bit of a challenge to take the string, tie it in a knot. Anyway, I was teaching them cat's cradle. So for those of you who are young and listening, cat's cradle is a string game that we used to play at recess.
We did.
And so Alex comes by and she's like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And so then her and I were playing it in class, showing the kids, and they were like all gathering around watching. So they need to see too that you have relationships with your coworkers, right? And that you have friendships and it's not just business all the time.
Yeah, it's that humanity piece that comes into play, and they get to see that other side of you. And I think there's also a security piece that the students feel when they know that the people who are caring for them and teaching them and guiding them also care for each other and teach each other and guide each other. And it creates a really nice atmosphere. I was a little worried when you started telling a story about when Alex came into the classroom. So thank goodness that it was okay. Okay, that's good. So, Cheryl, do you think about mentoring others at this point? Because you are mentoring others. And do you think about legacy?
I think I'm mentoring others. I don't know if I think too much about legacy, but I think that if somebody needs something, I'm like, "Oh, I have that, or this is what I did," or all of those things. I have a lot of different subjects that I've taught. So I think more about the mentoring, I think, than the legacy.
Okay, let me flip that a little bit, though. What if I said to you, what are 3 things that you want your students to walk away with after having been taught by you?
That I always cared about them.
There's no doubt they're getting that. I know that without a doubt that they all believe that. They run to see you. You've got that one covered. Check it off.
Yeah, check. Good. We got that one. That's
That hard work pays off. And I think that I demonstrate that all the time. I think that they see that, my lessons are ready to go and the work is ready to go. We talk about the answers. If I don't know it, I'm like, well, let's look for it. So hard work, and that the harder they work, the better off that they'll be. And one more, sometimes you just got to go with the flow. And that's okay. And they know that I have a hard time with this because I'm type A and everything has to be ready and prepared.
she claimed it. You got her to claim it, Henderson. Yeah.
Well, I am confident that you will check off all 3 of those things on the list of your legacy there. And you'll do it for colleagues too, because we see that with you as well, which is totally amazing and we really appreciate it. Now, let's move forward to the work-life balance and the personal well-being. In our Teaching in Your 40s episode, Cheryl, we talked about what challenges we might be facing, like physically, mentally, emotionally. What are some challenges that you've noticed in your 50s?
It's tiring. I know that I have a hard time with balancing at times. And I feel sometimes that my work will take over at home because I am the person that I can't relax until I mark those tests, right? I like to have the tests returned to the kids the next day, and that's just me. So I will mark the tests, all the tests, until they're done. But 9 o'clock is my cutoff because all the kids know that I go to bed. I told them 9:30. That's it.
So, Cheryl, do you think you push yourself too far? I like that you have a 9 o'clock boundary. So I think you have boundaries, but do you feel like you push yourself too far?
Some days, yes, because I'm very tired. But it's that I hate leaving stuff unmarked, right?
Yep.
I think that bothers me more than just doing it.
So, Cheryl, you do not have dishes in your sink when you go to bed, do you?
I don't do the dishes.
Ooh, I like this. Who does the dishes?
Sean does the dishes.
Oh, good. So your husband does the dishes. So there we have some, I don't want to say delegation. I want to say sharing of responsibilities. So
Yeah.
good for you. We
So
promote that. We love that.
I make the supper. Sean does the dishes.
Oh, nice
Yeah.
teamwork. Love that.
Yeah.
Cheryl, we're going to have a side conversation about work-life balance. That's just the reality. I'm just going to say it.
I know I'm bad at it, but sometimes your work takes first spot depending on the season that it is and what you have to get done. So when you're dedicated to your job, but you're dedicated to your family and your kids, you have to have, like, they're moving pieces, right? So sometimes your work's going to take first place. Sometimes your kids are going to take first place. So it just can't take first place all the time.
There's a rotation that happens. And I was at a workshop recently and the presenter said there is no such thing as work-life balance. Like there's these ebbs and flows, but it's making sure that, you know, when work is always taking that priority for a chunk of time, that you have a forward-looking ability to say, okay, but I have this break and this time's going to come, and protect that time. Because if you then sign on to something else or, you know, put big pressure on yourself continually, you never get that reset time. And that's something that I've had to figure out on my own. And I mean, it's a real process. And I mean, you're heading towards the end of your career. I don't think you're going to, you know, you do things the way that you do things at this point.
Yeah, and you should be because of your experience and what you know. Cheryl, what energizes or inspires you now that maybe didn't before when you were in your 20s and 30s and maybe 40s? Like I feel like you need to get, you know, another wind when you're in your 40s and 50s. So is there anything different that energizes you now in teaching?
So I always wanted to be a teacher. Like that was like right from when I was little. So that's good. I'm, living that dream part right now. But the relationships, everybody always says, oh, build your relationships. And when you're in it that the relationships with the students that you have in your class are important. But I think now in the end of my career, I have spent so long building those relationships that now you see those kids coming back. So my husband was at work and he was doing a welcome to the new employees that were coming in. And one of the new employees came up to him and said, "Hey, is your wife Mrs. Harrison?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, she was my teacher. She was my teacher in grade 5. Oh, yeah, I really liked her." And so Sean responded, "Yeah, that's my wife. And, she'll remember you when I go home and tell her your name." And the young man was like, "Really? She's really going to remember who I am?" And so, yeah, I think those relationships and the students coming back and, telling about the good times that they had. And So recently we had some program changes, and some past students had found out about that, and they just reached out to say how sad they were about these program changes and how those programs and their time in those programs were great. And I just thought that really shows relationship building, because these students are in university, so they've been gone for a long time, but those things were things that made an impact on them.
When you have the opportunity to teach different subjects and different programs where you can give students a different type of learning, practical experience, hands-on experience, especially, those are the times when you really get sort of that extra time to build relationships in a different way than you can when you're at the front of a classroom.
Mhm.
So I can completely understand how those experiences would be so profound and memorable for students, and that they would take them with them throughout their lives and remember who was there supporting them and who was there caring about them. So,
Exactly.
what a gift for them.
I remember many a days where I would sneak into one of Cheryl's programs where she was teaching students how to work in the kitchen. And Cheryl, I'm sure you remember this. You would have like a meal day, and the students would plan a menu, and everyone would sit around a table, and it would be like a dinner, and there would be 4 or 5 tables, and there'd be 4 students around each table, and you would go in and you could just feel the energy of the room. It was productive, it was exciting, it was community, it was calm, and sometimes a little bit of, like
Crazy.
cacophony. Yeah, like, well, because, and it was just something incredibly special. And I'm going to point out once again that in those opportunities, you're reaching students who may not be loving the math lessons and feeling like they're getting to shine. So in these moments, in these spaces with that style of learning and the hands-on and creating something, it just brings out something different. And I know that there's a bunch of people in our community and beyond working in kitchens, and their love of culinary was sparked in your classroom, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Okay, Cheryl, well, I think we're going to make this into a two-parter because we still have quite a few questions to ask you about family and life beyond the classroom. Before we wrap up this episode, I want to ask you, is there anything you're no longer afraid to do or say as a teacher in your 50s? Because I really want to know the answer to this.
Well, I think that, with the experience comes the reality of some of the new ideas presented. Okay, I'm going to give it a try, but I don't really think that this is going to work all that well. And you're not afraid to say that. And I think people can look at you and say, yeah, you've been in the classroom a long time. You have a lot of years of experience. Okay, how can we change it? How can we look at it? How will it be better? And talking to parents. I found this year probably the best. Talking to parents about the challenges that their kids are facing in school, and knowing that this is not going to work and this is not in their best interest. And I think that this year I seem to have a very good response from the parents that I have talked to. And they seem to be very trusting of the opinion, which I think is good, and I think shows that they trust the experience that I'm bringing, and knowing that I have their child's best interests at heart, and I'm not suggesting anything that I wouldn't do for my own children. And I think parents have been very accepting of that. So I'm not as worried about, because I know in your 20s and in your 30s, when you're first phoning parents, it can be nerve wracking and unsure. But right now I feel that I have enough years and taught enough children, have enough experience that I just tell them this is not working. you need to change this, your child needs to do this. And I feel that it's been met with a lot of agreement. So that's a good thing.
I think phone calls to parents is one of the most complex pieces of teaching. We recently did an episode on this about things that you need to get in order to have a good conversation with the parent. And it sounds like we should have tapped your brain before we taped that episode, because you got a lot of confidence, and I'm really happy that you have that. So I might have to come talk to you sometime about that. So before we wrap up this episode, I want to remind listeners that all of our generation series, Teaching in Your 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, and we're going to do a beyond, they are all connected. So if you listen when you're in your 20s, you get to forward think and think about what may be coming for you. And if you are in your 40s or 50s and you're listening to Teaching in Your 20s episode, it's a real reflection. And, you can do a little compare and contrast, but there's something in it for everybody. So Cheryl, I'm going to refer to the 20s and ask you a question. If you could speak to your 20-something self way, 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 way back when, what would you say to her?
And this comes off just the parent conversation: set firm boundaries. Set firm boundaries, because I think that a lot of times you're trying to please everybody. You're trying to please the students. You're trying to please your administrators. You're trying to please their parents. But you have to set firm boundaries, because I had an issue with a parent that lasted a whole year. And it wasn't good. And it really caused a lot of problems in my life and in my confidence and in my home life. And the repercussions that you carry with yourself for those things make you doubt your abilities.
Yes. I mean, when you have an issue and it's ongoing, it can break your confidence. It can hurt your own trust in yourself, and setting up those boundaries to make sure that you're safeguarding your time, your energy, and your emotions is really important, because there's a lot of people who are trying to access your time and your energy in this career. I'm going to remind Cheryl that she should be turning off the computer early, Chelsea. I mean, this is what I'm going to say right now.
And with those boundaries, don't be afraid if you have a really difficult parent, because I tried to deal with it a long time by myself. Try to involve other people. So whether it's your administrator or your association, because once I was like, well, I can't take this anymore, and there's going to be a third party, then everything with that parent seemed to slow down and ease off a little bit.
Yeah. So it's important that when you are experiencing conflict in the workplace, that you know where it is that you need to lean. And in this case, a supportive administrator and an informed association to make sure that you're being fully supported and you know what your rights and your boundaries are is pivotal to being able to move forward from these types of situations. And I'm glad you identified that you tried to deal with it by yourself for a long time. I mean, one of the things I've learned on the staff that we're on is that I have certain information and other people have different information. And when I lean on my colleagues with more and less time in the field, I am better suited to face these types of challenges, which goes back once again to relationships. So I'm glad you shared that with us. I think that we all can relate to that. And if I were listening and going through something similar, it would help me to not feel alone in that type of situation.
That's it for part 1 of Teaching in Your 50s, but the conversation doesn't end here. Join us next time for part 2 of Teaching in Your 50s as we talk with Cheryl about career, family, and life beyond the classroom.
Thanks for listening to the EduWell podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend, subscribe, and leave a positive review. It helps others to find us.
Follow us on Instagram and Pinterest to help spread the word. For more inspiration, tips, and book recommendations, just head to the show notes and join the EduWell newsletter today. Until next time, be well
and do well.